Imagine this for a second. Tomorrow morning, every country on Earth agrees to switch the side of the road they drive on. Millions of people wake up, get into their cars, and suddenly realize that everything they've done their entire lives is backwards. Your steering wheel is on the wrong side. Roundabouts make no sense. Highway exits feel like optical illusions. And something as simple as making a right turn suddenly becomes terrifying. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But here's the strange part. More than 70 countries already live in that reality every single day. If you've ever traveled from the United States to the United Kingdom, or from Germany to Japan, you've probably asked yourself one simple question: why? Why do some countries drive on the left while others drive on the right? And perhaps more importantly, who decided which side was the correct one? Was it politics, culture, engineering, or did someone simply flip a coin hundreds of years ago and the rest of us have been dealing with the consequences ever since? The answer is far stranger than you might think because it involves medieval knights, Napoleon Bonaparte, the British Empire, and one of the largest traffic experiments in human history. Let's go back nearly 2,000 years. Long before cars existed, people still had traffic problems. Ancient Romans traveled enormous distances by foot, horseback, and wagons. Archaeologists studying ancient Roman roads discovered something fascinating. Deep wagon wheel tracks suggest that travelers often kept to the left side of the road. But why? The answer might have everything to do with the fact that most humans are right-handed. Imagine you're riding a horse, carrying a sword on your left side, which was common throughout history. Keeping to the left side of the road meant your right hand was closest to anyone approaching you. If you encountered a stranger who wasn't particularly friendly, your sword hand was already in the perfect position to defend yourself. Even mounting your horse was easier from the left side because most people naturally mounted using their left foot first while keeping their sword from getting in the way. For centuries, traveling on the left simply made sense. In fact, by the Middle Ages, keeping left had become common practice throughout much of Europe. So if left was the original side of the road, why did so much of the world switch? Well, that's where Napoleon enters the story. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't just conquering armies, he was changing traffic patterns. During the late 18th and early 19th centuries, France officially adopted right-side travel. As Napoleon conquered much of Europe, countries under French influence began adopting the same system. Ironically, historians believe Napoleon himself may have preferred traveling on the right because he was left-handed. Riding on the right would have provided him with the same tactical advantages right-handed people enjoyed when riding on the left. Whether that story is entirely true or not, one thing certainly is, wherever Napoleon's influence spread, right-side driving usually followed. Countries such as Germany, Spain, Italy, and many others gradually adopted right-side traffic. But there was one global superpower that refused to follow the trend: Britain. The British had been driving on the left for centuries, and they weren't interested in changing simply because France said so. In fact, Britain formally made left-side travel law in the 18th century well before automobiles existed. And then, Britain did something that changed the driving habits of nearly one-third of the world. It built an empire. At its peak, the British Empire controlled territories across every inhabited continent, and wherever British influence went, left-side driving often went with it. That's why countries like Australia, India, New Zealand, South Africa, and several others still drive on the left today. Meanwhile, countries influenced by France, later joined by the growing influence of the United States, adopted right-side driving. Suddenly, the world was split in two. Today, roughly 2/3 of the world's countries drive on the right, while about 1/3 still drive on the left. But here's something even more fascinating. Changing sides isn't impossible, it's just incredibly expensive. In 1967, Sweden carried out one of history's most ambitious traffic experiments. Before then, Sweden drove on the left, despite most neighboring countries driving on the right. This created countless problems near international borders. Swedish drivers crossing into Norway or Finland suddenly had to switch sides of the road. So Sweden made a radical decision. On the 3rd of September 1967, in an event known simply as Dagen H or H-Day, the entire country switched from left-side driving to right-side driving. At precisely 4:50 in the morning, every vehicle in Sweden was required to stop. Drivers carefully moved to the opposite side of the road and waited. 10 minutes later, traffic resumed, but now everyone was driving on the right. Imagine changing decades of muscle memory in 10 minutes. Thousands of road signs had to be replaced, bus doors had to be redesigned, road markings needed repainting, massive public awareness campaigns were launched months before the change. The cost was enormous. Yet remarkably, accident rates initially dropped because everyone was driving so cautiously that nobody dared make a mistake. And that's why most countries never switch. It's simply too disruptive and too expensive to justify unless there's an overwhelming reason to do so. So, which side is actually better? The truth is, neither one is objectively superior. If you've spent your entire life driving on the right, left side driving feels completely unnatural. If you've grown up driving on the left, the opposite is true. Human beings are remarkably adaptable creatures. Give us enough time, and almost anything becomes normal. And that's really what makes this story so fascinating. Every single time you sit behind the wheel of a car, you're participating in a decision made hundreds, sometimes thousands of years ago by soldiers, emperors, politicians, and empires you've probably never thought about. Something as ordinary as which side of the road you drive on isn't random at all. It's living history hiding in plain sight. So now I want to know, which side does your country drive on? The left or the right? And if you had to switch tomorrow morning, do you think you'd survive your morning commute? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and helping us build this channel from the very beginning. We're just getting started, and there are thousands of fascinating stories hiding behind the everyday things we never stop to question. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.